This supplementary budget does two things. First, it brings an adjustments appropriation bill and a division of revenue amendment bill to the House. It also formalizes the two tax bills to give effect to our response. These bills ask Parliament to approve the response package to COVID-19. Second, Mr. President, this supplementary budget lays a path to the direction that you gave us on the 21st of April, when you said, and I quote, not merely return our economy to where it was before the virus, but to forge a new economy in a new global reality. The supplementary budget sets out a roadmap to stabilize debt by improving our spending patterns and creating a foundation for economic revival. Most of our energies and resources have been focused on COVID-19 as we fight this pandemic. We have quickly adopted temporary counter-cyclical fiscal and monetary policy measures. After the storm ends, we must work as quickly as possible to emerge with a sustainable fiscus. That is our weakness. We have accumulated far too much debt. This downturn, severe as it is, will add more to the debt. This year, out of every rand we pay in tax, 21 cents goes to paying the interest on our past debts. This level of indebtedness condemns us to ever higher interest rates. If we reduce this debt, we will reduce interest rates for everyone, and we will unleash investment and growth. Let me outline, Madam Speaker, our updated fiscal and economic focus for the current fiscal year. COVID-19 has turned the global economy upside down. In the February budget, we expected that the global economy would expand by 3.3% in 2020. We now expect a global contraction of 5.2% this year. This will bring about the broadest collapse in per capita income since 1870. Throughout the world, tens of millions of workers have lost their jobs. South African unemployment has also risen to around 30.1% in the first 3 months of this year. The South African economy is now expected to contract by 7.2% in 2020. This is the largest contraction in nearly 90 years. Inflation, however, will remain low in 2020, in line with the outcomes of this morning. Commodity price increases and a weaker oil price have softened the blow. But as a small open economy, reliant to a large extent on exports, we have been hard hit by the decline in global demand and the restrictions of economic activity. Never before has government worked closely with the private sector, with labor, with the community, and with the central bank. Standing as a united people, it is clear that we can achieve our objectives. The government's response to COVID-19 has provided an economic support package which directs 500 billion rand straight at the problem. This is one of the largest economic response packages in the developing world. The South African Reserve Bank has reduced interest rates and made it easier for banks to lend to their clients and therefore support the economy. The South African Reserve Bank has also supported liquidity in the domestic bond market. The bank has stated that they stand ready to take additional action should the need arise. I now turn to the fiscal framework for 2021. Honorable members, projected total consolidated budget spending, including debt service costs, will exceed 2 trillion rand for the first time ever. Gross tax revenue collected during the first 2 months of 2020 was 142 billion rand, compared to our initial forecast for the same period of 177.3 billion rand. Put another way, we are already 35.3 billion rand behind on our 2020-21 target. As a consequence, gross tax revenue for 2020-21 fiscal year is revised down from 1.43 trillion rand to 1.12 trillion rand. That means that we are expecting to miss our tax target for the year by some 300 billion rand. Part of this revision is because the measures announced earlier this year give taxpayers outright relief of some 26 billion rand, and also there are delays in the tax collection of approximately 44 billion rand. These proposals are contained in the Disaster Management Tax Relief Bill and the Disaster Management Tax Relief Administration Bill that we table today. Taken together, the measures and adjustments we present translate into a consolidated budget deficit of 761.7 billion rand, or 15.7% of GDP in 2020-21. Our early projection is that gross national debt will be close to 4 trillion rand, or 81.8% of GDP by the end of this fiscal year. This is compared to an estimated 3.56 trillion, or 65.6% of GDP in February. Without external support, these borrowings will almost entirely consume all our national domestic savings, leaving no space for investment or borrowing by everyone else. For this reason, we need to access new sources of funding throughout the world. Government intends to borrow around $7 billion from international financial institutions to support our response. We must make no mistake, these are still borrowings and not revenue, and thus they will need to be repaid in the future. The supplementary budget proposes 21.5 billion rand for COVID-19 related healthcare spending. It also proposes a further allocation of 12.6 billion to services at the front line of our response to the pandemic. Allocations have been informed by health experts who have been modeling this disease. And it is very clear that we have a big struggle ahead of us. This money partly supports increased screening and testing, allowing us to open up more and more of the economy. We have successfully increased our COVID-19 bed capacity to about 27,000, identified 400 quarantine sites with a capacity of around 36,000 beds across the length and breadth of our country, and deployed nearly 50,000 community health care workers to screen millions of South Africans. We have tested over 1.3 million people. Provincial governments will add at least 5 billion rand for the education catch-up plan, social welfare support for communities, and provision of quarantine sites by public works departments and responses in other sectors. To support vulnerable households, an additional allocation of 25.5 billion rand to the Social Development Department is proposed for a total relief package of 41 billion rand. All these measures will come to an end in October. We have implemented health and hygiene measures in 7,000 early childhood development centers and appointed about an additional 1,800 social workers. Now, the figures from yesterday show that the unemployment rate in our country is the greatest challenge. The economic support package sets aside 100 billion rand for a multi-year comprehensive response to our jobs emergency. The President's Job Creation and Protection Initiative will be rolled out over the medium term. It will include a repurposed public employment program and a presidential youth employment intervention. In this year, an amount of 6.1 billion rand is already allocated, and a further 19.6 billion rand has been set aside for this purpose. We want to go through the path of sustainability and go through the narrow gap. The cabinet, under the leadership of President Ramaphosa, has found the narrow gate. Government shall go through it. Government will narrow the deficit and stabilize the debt at 87.4% of GDP in 2023-24. Cabinet has also adopted a target of a primary surplus by 2023-24. This is about the same time that our aloe ferox will flower for the first time. As any farmer will tell you, patience and focus is required. The medium-term expenditure framework process will be guided by the principles of zero-based budgeting from July onwards. This means that budgeting from now onwards will be based on clearly set out policy priorities, and therefore amounts will be accordingly allocated. This year, nearly half of all consolidated revenue will go towards the compensation of workers in the public service. We value the important work that public servants do. Minister Mkunu is negotiating with our partners in the labor movement to find a balanced solution that sets compensation at an appropriate, affordable, and fair level. We wish him well in this regard. Finally, honorable members, building a bridge to a post-lockdown future will require that we build high-quality physical bridges, roads, railways, ports, and other infrastructure. Infrastructure has demonstrated throughout the world that this can be a flywheel by which we can further spur economic growth. Just as we have toiled together to manage the pandemic, let us harness this same unity of purpose and build the infrastructure our nation needs.
For more, go to ewn.co.za.